And welcome everybody to another episode of Pulse of Fins Nation. I am your host, Louis Sung. I will be joined later on by Eric Wiedeke. I will also probably be joined by Chad Ronnebaum and probably Alfredo Artiaga of the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast near the second half of the show. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff right now. Basically, I hope everybody had a very Merry Christmas, that everybody spent some time with their families and everybody was able to basically give themselves some time to reflect on what's important in life. So I'm now going to go ahead and welcome Eric Wiedeke to the show. I hope your Christmas was good as well, sir.
It was nice. It was nice. Good relaxing day. How about yours?
Nah, not too bad. Had some breakfast with the fam the day before. Had dinner with the fam at the non-sponsored steakhouse, which I will not name because we are not sponsored. But if they do want to sponsor us, feel free to reach out. We'll talk. But in any case, we're going to talk about, can the Miami Dolphins get a Christmas miracle? There is still a method for the Miami Dolphins making the playoffs. It is not a likely scenario. It is not something that we should be holding our breaths on. But nevertheless, there is a path to the playoffs, even still, for the Miami Dolphins. And we're going to go ahead and talk about that, as well as what we should be seeing. There is some news, Mike McDaniel getting the game ball from last week against the San Francisco 49ers. And what does that imply? Also, the fact that Shaq Barrett, that he ended up getting released after all. So what can possibly be going on behind the scenes? So we're going to get into all that. But before that, as really quick, we just need to go ahead and mention that this show is brought to you by ThompsonCigar.com. You can use the promo code 3YARDS. That's the number 3, YARDS. And you can get 20% off your order on that website for an order of $75 or more. So if you're somebody who enjoys a good cigar, go to ThompsonCigar.com. Use the promo code 3YARDS, 3YARDS. And you can get 20% off your order of $75 or more. All right, Eric, so here's what's going down. Obviously, the Miami Dolphins are in a pickle. They are still mathematically in this whole thing. All they have to do, and this is something that they definitely have the capability of doing, they have to win out, which means they have to beat Cleveland this upcoming Sunday, and they have to beat the Jets right after that, as I welcome Chad Ronnebaum to the show. Hello, Chad. How are you?
Good. How about you, Louis?
Doing well. Hope you had a fantastic Christmas.
I did. I even got some Dolphin gear, so.
So there you go. Did you add it to your display back there?
No, I didn't get any memorabilia type stuff, so I think I got some stocks and a shirt, stuff like that. My kid got a 1995 Dan Marino Pro Bowl jersey, which is pretty cool.
Well, I think Mason got the better end of that deal.
He did. He definitely got the better end of that deal.
All right, so we were just talking about can the Miami Dolphins get a Christmas miracle? So they managed to beat the San Francisco 49ers, of which Mike McDaniel was personally given the game ball by owner Stephen Ross. So I'm just going to go ahead, and we'll probably talk about this more later on in the show, but I think that firmly settles whether or not McDaniel is going to get fired. You don't go and give your head coach the game ball if you're planning on firing him 3 weeks later. That's just not going to happen. So with that being said, here's what's going on. Miami has one path to the playoffs left. This is the most likely scenario if there is any other kind. Denver has to lose their next 2 games. So they have to lose out from here on out. And there is still a distinct possibility that can happen because they are facing Kansas City. And who was the other team? I can't remember the other team.
Cincinnati.
The
Bengals. Okay. So the Bengals are going to be on there. And I'm sure the Bengals will want to play spoilers for Denver, so they're not going to just lay down and die. Mahomes.
Bengals are still in the playoff race too. So
yeah, mathematically they're still in it.
So Cincinnati will want to try to take down Denver. And I know that Eric was worried about Patrick Mahomes deciding that, you know what, I don't need to play these last 2 games. We've already settled the number 1 seed, and we can just take these next 2 weeks off. Even if they do that, I feel like at this point the Chiefs are good enough that they can win anyway. That's just kind of how I feel about it. Like they would have to play all 3rd and 4th stringers, and eventually somebody's going to have to come in. They can't play the whole game. So I feel like that there's a very distinct possibility that Denver could lose out. But it's not just Denver we need to look at. It's also Indianapolis. The Indianapolis Colts just need to win or lose 1 more game. They need to lose 1 more game. And Indianapolis, unlike the Broncos, they actually have a much easier schedule ahead of them. They have the Giants, which are trash, and they have the Jaguars,
put it mildly,
which are also trash.
Right.
So those are those two teams are fighting for the those 2 teams are fighting for the number 1 overall pick. So the likelihood of Indianapolis losing is not high, but there's always that thing of any given Sunday. When the season first started, we all were looking at that San Francisco game and saying, yeah, we're going to get our tails kicked. And we ended up winning later on down the line. So with that being said, Chad, I'll go ahead and ask you first. Do you think the Miami Dolphins will get this Christmas miracle, or is this just too much going against them?
I don't think they're going to get the Christmas miracle. So, first of all, they have to win their next 2 games on the road. So that in itself will be challenging. I don't think the Browns or Jets are going to. I don't think they're going to like tank and lose on purpose or anything. So both those games will be harder than you might think. But I don't see Kansas City playing 3 or 4 of their best players on the last game of the season. There's no way they'll play Mahomes. I mean, whether Mahomes wants to play or not. So the Kansas City beating Denver the last game of the season seems unlikely. And it also, boy, the Giants are bad. And so I don't see the Giants beating the Colts. Maybe the Jaguars will give them a run because it's a divisional game, but you put it all together, and all those things have to happen. Miami has to win 2 on the road. Denver has to lose 2 against one team that won't be playing their starters, and then the Colts have to lose to probably 2 of the probably top 3 worst teams in the league. So that's not likely.
Eric, do you concur?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think I'll say this for everyone. If the Dolphins are still in the postseason picture by the time we wake up on Sunday morning, then it becomes real. Because the Dolphins can be eliminated on Saturday. Chargers win, Broncos win, you're out. Everyone's at 10 wins. But if you are still in it by Sunday morning, at that point, I would have to think that your odds probably jump pretty significantly from 6% to, 25, 30, what have you. Then, the game on Sunday matters. Then you just, hey, what happens with Indy in one of those games? And then you kind of have a anything can happen kind of matchup with Denver and Kansas City. But I think the most likely scenario is that they'll probably be out of it by Saturday night, which I think has interesting, consequences for the game on Sunday. What do they do if they are eliminated? I kind of hope they're not eliminated, just from the perspective of I want to see them still play games with stakes, and I want to see the players kind of, continue to play for something, and because you get a better evaluation of your guys when the games matter. But I think there's a pretty good chance that we're watching that game on Cleveland, watching that game in Cleveland, knowing full well that the Dolphins are eliminated.
All right. So I didn't the Chargers have to lose out as well. I did not think that was.
Well, no. It's either the Broncos or the Chargers have to lose out. But if both teams win, they both get to 10 wins, and you're looking at all 3 AFC wildcard teams 10 wins. There's no way. The Dolphins can only get 9.
Gotcha. All right. So then, yeah, rooting for Drake May to put on a performance against the Chargers then, I guess, because they're already out of it.
They almost went to Orchard Park and beat the Bills last week, so anything can happen.
I think Josh Allen got tired.
I in terms of next week, I do think the Bengals are a better team than the Broncos. So we'll see. I could see the Bengals beating them. That's our most likely game to keep our hopes alive. Now I'll go with Eric. If somehow the Giants beat the Colts and the Broncos lose to the Bengals, then the last week gets really interesting, because it's just, if Kansas City decides to try, and maybe, I don't know if you guys remember a couple years ago or whatever that was, 3 years ago, when we beat Brady with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and that knocked the Patriots out of the number 1 seed in the playoffs and gave it to the Chiefs, and Andy Reid goes, "All hail the Dolphins," or something like that. So hopefully they'll remember that if we do get to that situation. And remember, they owe us a favor at the last game of the year. and do whatever they can do to knock out Denver. So I'm sure the Dolphins fans will have that on blast. Everybody in the Chiefs that will listen, that you owe us one. This is your chance to redeem it right here.
Well, I think the interesting thing there is I read where, if Kansas City decides to bench their guys in the last week of the season, they're essentially, their starters will not have played from Christmas to like January 18th. And then the question becomes, well, do you want to give your guys that much rest to where they're off for, nearly a full calendar month at this point, by the time they're actually playing their next game? And I think that's, something that Kansas City's going to have to think about, knowing the way that Andy Reid approaches the preseason. Maybe he plays Mahomes a half rather than a full game, but just kind of gets him some kind of run, to keep from rust setting in. No, I think if the scenario that I really don't want to have to face is the Dolphins needing to win Sunday or week 18 and needing the Colts and Broncos to lose that week, because I just, call it PTSD, call it what you will, I'm a coward, whatever. It would just be so Dolphins for the Colts and the Broncos to both lose, and then the Dolphins lay an egg in the Meadowlands. But we're being more positive today. We're being more positive than that. If that happens, they get in, they beat Aaron Rodgers, or what's Aaron Rodgers.
PTSD will be that happens and Miami loses to the Jets. That's more likely what will happen in my mind.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And we welcome Alfredo Arteaga, the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast, to the show. Merry belated Christmas, sir. How are you?
He's muted.
I think he might have walked away. Okay, so he's not technically here at the moment, but we'll bring him back in just a few minutes.
I'm back. I'm here.
Okay, there you are.
Yeah, I looked at this. I heard you the first time when you were talking about Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs ran away with the 1 seed in 2020. They sat everybody the last week. But if you remember, that was a COVID year. Okay? So there was no break in between the Super Bowl and the AFC Championship game, and there were no bye weeks that year. Okay? I'm looking at the other time that they went the whole way, and they clinched. That was 2023. And they played everybody the last week of the season against the Raiders, and they beat them 31-13. So there's evidence that they sit people. There's evidence that they don't sit people. And I'm looking at that game to see if Mahomes played the whole way. And let me check. Yeah, he played the whole game.
Yeah, and saying I'm not really all that concerned about the idea that the Chiefs are just gonna just sit down and say, you know what, we don't care anymore. That doesn't seem very Chief-like. Like I really feel like they want to. These players want to play. That's kind of part of what makes them so special. It's like nobody's sitting, nobody's relaxing, nobody's sitting on their laurels. Everybody's busting their tail, and that's kind of why they're so unstoppable.
No, and the team, like if anybody's like kind of banged up, like Chris Jones, like they're probably gonna sit,
But that's a different thing. It's not just I can take a vacation because I don't need to play anymore.
Yeah, and there's a lot of evidence in history that this doesn't work. Like you think about it, and you're like, yeah, just sit everybody. We don't need the game. Who cares? It's happened a million times. The Colts one time almost went undefeated, and they sat everybody the last week. They ended up losing in the playoffs, and not only did they end up losing in the playoffs, they looked rusty. They looked like they were completely out of it. So yeah, I think it's a bad idea to just sit everybody for 3 weeks. Like, Chris Jones, like, defensive lineman, offensive lineman that's banged up. Yeah, it makes sense, man. Get them right for the playoffs. I think I know you talked about it. I'm not really worried about the Colts losing. Like, if they win out, man, they deserve it, okay? But I think they'll lose. And I don't know where they're going to lose, but there's a loss there somewhere. And that division is really weird. I know they play the Jaguars last week of the season. That division is weird. Last year, the Jaguars went into Tennessee with a win and in situation. They got their ass kicked by the Titans, who had nothing to play for. So that's a weird division. So anything can happen there. I don't mind that one.
Well, the Titans had the spoiling the Jaguars to play for.
Yeah. Well, the Jaguars will have spoiling the Colts to play for, you know?
Yeah, but they had Trevor Lawrence back then. Now it's freaking Mac Jones.
That might even
That might be an improvement.
scenario.
Oh, is it? Is it? Are we that sour on Trevor Lawrence now that it's like Mac Jones?
In this scenario, you never know. It's a weird matchup.
He hasn't done anything to suggest differently so far. So Trevor Lawrence.
You know, but one thing, and I just talked about this on Q&A Live this afternoon. The Chargers are going into New England on Saturday. Now, the Chargers finish up, with the Raiders, okay? It is a division game, all right? So you never know what happens there. But I kind of feel good about that game against the Patriots. And I was looking this up, and it kind of pissed me off, to be honest with you. Look, the NFL knows what they're doing when they're doing these schedules. Somehow Tua has played, depending on who you talk to, 5 or 7 games in under 40-degree weather, okay? I think it's 5 for sure. I know he's played 3 under 30-degree weather, and oddly enough, he plays better the colder it is, besides that Kansas City game. But let's just say, for argument's sake, it's 5, all right? Do you know how many games Justin Herbert has played in under 40-degree weather in his career?
Tell me like 2.
None. 0.
0. I wanted to say 0, but it's like there's no way it's 0.
And then, obviously somebody's going to say, oh, wait a minute, but, Tua plays in the AFC East, and he plays in the AFC West. He plays against Denver, and he plays against Kansas City. Outdoor teams that have cold weather. Somehow he's never played in under 40-degree weather. And if you want to throw back, Tua plays in New England and the Jets. Well, first of all, he's never lost to New England or the Jets. He's never played in a game in New England or New York under 40-degree weather. It's only been in Buffalo. So 3 times, actually. So why is that a thing? Having said that, Saturday, weather expected for New England, 41 degrees. So Herbert's going to just escape, okay?
Does that 1 degree make that much of a difference?
Yeah, I'm just interested to see what happens to a team from LA when they actually have to go play in cold weather, or is it just us that has to go play in cold weather all the time?
And that it matters.
That's weird, man. You would think having to go to Denver and having to go to Kansas City at some point they would do that at the end of the year for the Chargers, but I guess not.
No, they just get lucky with the weather every time that they go over there.
So what is the likelihood that you think the Dolphins get this Christmas miracle, Alf? Are you holding your breath, or are you just kind of like bracing yourself for draft talk in 2 weeks?
Nah, I think it's kind of likely, but I don't know where it's going to come from. After Saturday, I will know much more. If they both lose, it's happening. If just one loses, then we're talking about pretty narrow, and then we're just looking at that Charger game. I mean, not that Charger game, that Colts game on Sunday against the Giants. I don't think it's hopeless, by the way. The Giants are terrible, but I don't think it's hopeless. Again, it's in New York. It's a dome team going outside. Weird things happen. I remember very clearly, man, a Denver Broncos team that was really threatening to go undefeated. Okay, like that was a legit threat to going undefeated, and they went to go play a terrible Giants team, quarterbacked by Danny Cannella, I believe, of all people, and they lost in New York. So, yeah, I think that could happen, but after Saturday, I will know much more. Look, I'm feeling really good. Look, Cincinnati's going to kill the Broncos. Cincinnati, that offense is humming. Joe Burrow's playing as good as he's ever played. They're going to beat the Broncos. I think the Broncos losing out is, I don't think, an issue. Then you're just hoping for that one Colts loss.
All right, so now that we've gone over that there's also the one proviso of all this. We're talking about other teams losing. The reality is Miami needs to win. They can't lose another game. They can't lose anything else. They have to go and play against Cleveland. They have to go and play against the Jets, obviously. It's the MetLife takeover. The last game of the season is the MetLife takeover. So if Miami's still in it, come Jets game, I hope Igor and all the Dolphins NYC folks are screaming their lungs out, because they're going to need every bit of support that they can get their hands on. So now I want to go ahead and talk about this, because it seems to me like the rumor mill has been just going in overdrive over these past few weeks. First, it was the nonsense about, the players don't respect McDaniel because he's cold, or the team's gonna get ready to fire him if they don't make the playoffs, or some nonsense like that. We need to address this. Stephen Ross, after the victory against the San Francisco 49ers, in which, whether anybody wants to say it this way or not, Mike McDaniel defeated one of his mentors in the Kyle Shanahan.
And his second in a row. He beat McVay.
Oh, he beat McVay. That's right. He did beat Sean McVay. So there you go.
He did lose. He did lose to LaFleur. So not 2 in a row.
Well,
so 2 out of 3.
I don't know what it is about these Packers, man. Like, they have offensive lines. Like, they consistently have an amazing offensive line. I'm jealous of whoever's running the offensive line up over there in Green Bay. But with that being said, Stephen Ross was on the field watching the game, and everything went down. He went into the locker room and gave Mike McDaniel a game ball. As I mentioned previously, it is very unlikely that you are going to go in there and go out of your way as the owner of the team to give the head coach a game ball and congratulate him on the victory if in 3 weeks' time, regardless of the results, you are intending to fire him. So I think that the idea of McDaniel being on the hot seat is severely overstated. I think that it's almost guaranteed. No, I'm not going to say almost. I'm going to put my neck out there. It is guaranteed he comes back next year. There is no question about it. He is back. And the question really becomes, is Chris Greer going to be back? And quite frankly, gentlemen, I'm starting to lean towards the idea that, and I'm not supporting this idea, but I am saying that there's a distinct, I think it's going to be Chris Greer is coming back as well. And he's going to be able to point to his record for this year at least and say, well, we didn't have X, Y, and Z, and we missed out on this because of injuries and whatever may have you. But he's going to point at Chop Robinson, who is one of the best young pass rushers in the league already.
No, one of the best pass rushers, period, in the league. I don't know if you saw Bill Barnwell, and I have my own issues with Bill Barnwell, but his numbers are his numbers. So he is now leading the league in quick pressure rate, meaning these are plays that are essentially done inside of a minute. Meaning he's getting off of his edge. I mean, inside of a second, off of his edge so quickly that he's moving the quarterback off the spot right away. Those are dead plays. Those are like turnovers.
So Chop Robinson, first round pick, and that's Chris Greer, and he's going to be able to point to he's going to show Mr. Ross, well, look, I got this guy here, and he's already one of the best pass rushers in football. At least even if nobody wants to say he is, he will be in a year's time. And Jalen Phillips is going to be coming back next year, who I also drafted, and they're going to make a deadly combination. He's going to be able to point to Patrick Paul, who is trending upwards, and saying, listen, we're developing this guy. He's going to be the left tackle of the future for a very long time, assuming they re-sign him, because Miami doesn't like re-signing good players. He's going to be able to point to Malik Washington, who is turning out to be an upgrade over what we're projecting to be River Craycraft. So he's already blocking very, very well. All he has to do is get better at just being an actual weapon, and it's McDaniel's job to make that happen. So far, he's 3 for 3. There are people in the building, I think, who are very intrigued by Patrick McMorris. So there's a likelihood that there may be something there later down the line.
Those are not his biggest successes either.
For this year?
No, this year. This year. This year, his 2 biggest successes are Aaron Brewer and Jordan Brooks.
Well, those are free agents. I'm talking about
Johnny Smith is a very good one too.
Well, I was just talking about the draft, though. But yes, in free agency, Jordan Brooks, Aaron Brewer, Jonnu Smith, Calais Campbell. Like, for all the talk that we've had about whether or not Chris Greer deserves to be fired because he didn't address the backup quarterback, he didn't fix the offensive line overall, he still got Brewer. So I guess that's something. But he's going to be able to point to this season and say, listen, I got you all these good players. And all of the players that I brought in here, almost all of them, were crucial to whatever success Miami had this year at all. The only one that you can really point to and say, well, this was an absolute bust, was Odell Beckham. And Odell Beckham, he somewhere down the line, he ended up getting hurt again. And that's probably why things got ruined. You're what is
21. 21. 2-1.
What
Poyer.
is
That's
two? Oh,
Jordan
Jordan
yeah.
Poyer.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
That's your second big bust there.
I don't know if I call him a big bust, but I'll definitely say he hasn't lived up to expectations, like at all.
No.
So, I still think that there's some confusion there because there are times when Ramsey looks like he might be out of position, or then Poyer's out of position, Javon Holland's out of position, and the entire safety room is just running around like chickens with their heads cut off. How much of it can we say is Poyer, and how much do we have to say, okay, well, why isn't Javon Holland in position?
Well, I mean, it's not even. It's so. Listen, from a communication standpoint, that's Javon Holland's job first and foremost, is to be the kind of quarterback of that secondary. So that falls on him. Where you can say Poyer has been a bust is the fact that, just physically, I don't think he's the same guy as he was in Buffalo. At this point, he's a little bit of a step slower. He played well in Buffalo, and maybe they were okay to think that he was going to be a really good veteran addition. I just think in general, in the secondary in particular, you have to get younger, just overall. But
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that.
To the larger point, I've started to come around on the fact that, I think next year is kind of because you think about it, it doesn't really make sense if the Dolphins decide, all right, you know what, we're going to cut ties with Chris Greer, we want to go in a different direction, whether it's real or perceived or what have you. The idea is going to be that Mike McDaniel is above the next GM in hierarchy, because naturally you're going to have to get a GM that wants to come in and work with McDaniel. If you're making the decision, we are keeping Mike McDaniel no matter what, it's just Greer out the door, McDaniel's safe.
And keeping McDaniel means you're keeping Tua. That's
right.
Non-negotiable as well.
Well, yes. No, of course, naturally. But the idea there is, okay, well then you're making a GM selection with your head coach in mind, which then means if you ever have to fire the head coach, naturally the GM has to go with him because the GM is the coach's guy. So I think it's just, you don't want to get your cords tangled. You want it to be clean. You want it to be a clean break if you ever have to, say goodbye to this regime. You want it to be a clean break, start fresh. So for that reason, I think that they will keep Chris Greer around. I think that they'll probably, keep him around with the idea that next year just has to be like there has to be tangible results with this thing next year. And I think that that'll go for both Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer, because you look at the expectations that they had this year and they didn't live up to them, point blank period. Now, whether that's because of Tua getting hurt, you can make that argument. You could say, yeah, well, they'd be a 10-11 win team. Well, how much better would they be if they would have addressed backup quarterback? And so I think that from that perspective, you're looking at it, those are valid critiques to have. But the more I sit and the more I think about it, okay, well, it probably doesn't make sense to get rid of one, but not the other at this point, because it's going to be a situation where the new GM is going to be feeling like he has to answer to Mike McDaniel. And at that point, it's just weird. The Dolphins have done that before. I don't think that's a road that they want to or even ought to go down again. So I think you bring these guys back. If you're Stephen Ross, you say, listen, I'm prepared to give you guys the resources yet again to make this thing right, to make the changes that you feel are necessary to taking this team where it needs to go next season. And I think, you kind of put them on that short leash and you say, listen, I've given you guys everything you need to be successful. Go make it happen.
All right, we're going to go ahead and we'll keep talking about this. But first, as we are at the halfway point, want to go ahead and mention that the show is also brought to you by our other sponsors, Underdog Fantasy.
Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players by just selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money, so turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. They have 2 promotions going right now. Vulture Protection. If you select a designated running back to score a touchdown in your pick'em entry, and they get vultured, we will rescue your entry. Red Zone Rush. A game you won't find anywhere else. Just pick whether or not a player will score a TD by swiping right for yes or left for no. Simple as that. Plus, your entry will be automatically boosted, and you'll get a 51% profit boost when you play. Join over 5 million fans that are already playing on Underdog. With their Champs game, you can win money by making entries with your favorite players. Download the Underdog app today and use the promo code 3YARDS. That's the promo code 3YARDS to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Higher or lower, you make the call on Underdog. Must be 18 plus, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 19 plus in Alabama, New England, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get into some comments here. So in the chat we have Finn for Life. He's talking about the offensive line. The game is won and lost in the trenches, and you can't cut corners. We make it to get the ball out quick. Imagine if Tua could go through the progressions without forcing or anticipating. So I want to, just to be clear, I agree with the obvious premise. I've been pushing for offensive line to be a freaking wall for the longest time, but the offense by design is going to get the ball out quickly. It's not designed for Tua to sit back there for 4 or 5 seconds plus and just kind of survey the field and find somebody. The idea is that Tua is going to throw the ball before the wide receiver even comes out of his break because he knows where the ball is supposed to go. So that's always going to be part of it. Where I do want the offensive line, again, to be a solid wall is because our running game is so dependent on certain players being available. Austin Jackson being gone almost toasted the offensive line. Last week was the first time that Miami's been able to run the football, and it feels like 4 weeks. It took 4 weeks for them to be able to run the ball again, and that's not a good thing. You want guys who can actually help make sure that happens. For Isaiah Wynn, he was the one who broke open that block so that Devon Achane could run for that last touchdown. It was a thing of beauty, but it was Isaiah Wynn, and I'd been screaming to the heavens for why is Isaiah Wynn not playing? Talent always wins. I don't care about the chemistry. Talent always wins. And Isaiah Wynn made the big play that Liam Eichenberg did not. And so I think, and if McDaniel is smart, this will be the case. Isaiah Wynn will be starting against the Cleveland Browns, and he will stay there. There is not going to be any more rotating. And
go ahead. Let's start.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the rotation is because I don't think Isaiah Wynn's in very good condition. How in shape he is. He looks really heavy to me, and so I think they rotate him just because I don't think he was capable of playing 60 minutes of football. So hopefully he's progressing now after having been practicing and stuff, because I don't know what he did in the offseason, but this kind of all flows together, and I wanted to circle back real quick on Chris Greer, because I understand, because he's about a 50-50 call to me, but I think where the Dolphins lack a lot of times is Stephen Ross stepping up and saying who's asking the hard questions and making the hard decisions right now, because there are certain things that I'm not clear whether it's Mike McDaniel or Chris Greer. An obvious one to me, I know I was running this week, we have the most ridiculous punt and punt return team I've ever seen. It would be disgraceful at the high school level. I mean, this last game, every game they do something that's just circus comical. But last game, Malik Washington literally tried to grab the ball with 2 defenders standing right over top of it. I mean, that is high school ridiculously dumb. And not to be outdone, Duke Riley tried the same exact thing like 6 or 7 weeks ago, whatever it was. We've had a muffed punt. We've had We've had our own punt blocked. We've given up fake punt returns. We've had not attempting to come back and bounce. We've had 2 times in the same game where we didn't even know how to line up legally. We've had Malik Washington having no idea how to wave people off and letting the ball hit at his feet, sometimes taking it off the bounce. I could go on and on about how ridiculously bad our punt team is. And nobody's done a thing about it. This guy got brought back. Nobody's done anything about it. Is that Mike McDaniel that's protecting him, or is it Chris Greer? Who's incapable of action at that point? I also go back to the backup quarterback. Yeah, you can say we didn't make the playoffs because Tua got hurt. Tua's only played one full season since his junior year in college. You have to understand the chances of Tua completing a full season are less likely than him getting hurt. He typically gets hurt every year. That's his history. That's not a knock on Tua. That's reality. Who thought that our backup quarterback Mike White was the plan? Because Mike White was expected to be the backup, and he couldn't even beat out Skylar Thompson in the preseason, who's probably not even a top 70 quarterback in the league. Is that Mike McDaniel refusing to look at other options at backup quarterback, or is this Chris Greer saying, nope, you got to work with what you got? And so that comes back to Stephen Ross, is who's asking these questions right now. Do I think Mike McDaniel should be fired? No, I think Mike McDaniel, I like his offense. I think he's doing a decent job. But how are you going to approach the reoccurring issues that cost this team games? This team does not travel well on the road in loud environments. I don't think it's cold. This offense does not execute in noisy environments. We get pre-snap penalties. We get a lot of them. We get delay of game calls. We have to waste timeouts. And I have yet to see Mike McDaniel fix whatever happens to this offense when it's in an away stadium and it's loud. They struggle to execute. My guess, so for Stephen Ross, what is the plan to fix that next year? Because do you want to get better next year, or do you just want to suffer from the same fate? I think the short yardage offense continues to be a problem, and I think that's hand in hand with the guards. And so if I'm Stephen Ross, I probably don't want to keep Chris Greer because he's shown no ability to scout and bring in guards in the middle rounds of the draft. He fails at the middle rounds in the draft. And next season, we need probably 2 new guards to come in, and we need guards that can both be agile enough to execute Mike McDaniel's outside scheme, but not just get blown off the ball. Like you watch Liam Eichenberg in that Texans game, it's just, my God, he's just getting blown back. And it's hard to do a lot of different things when your guards just get bullied around like that. And they got to get bigger, stronger guards. And who's going to be the one that gets those guys? Because Chris Greer has not shown any ability to get guards. And so if I'm Stephen Ross, I'm 87 years old. Am I going to bring Chris Greer back, who's shown no ability to get guards? Who's responsible for the medical situation? Who thought that Odell Beckham Jr. was healthy? Who thought Isaiah Wynn was healthy? Because those guys were being anticipated to be our starting guard and our third wide receiver. And Isaiah Wynn here, we're at the last end of the season before he's physically able to play. We're in about the middle of the season with Odell Beckham. Who made the medical decisions on those guys? And so I'm portraying this as what I need Stephen Ross to be asking these questions, because Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel, somebody was dropping the ball on a lot of these issues. And going forward next year, what is the plan to not just repeat those steps? Because you can go get a great edge player. You can go get a good guard. But if we're going to not be able to execute our offense on the road, if we're not going to be able to get more than like a 40% conversion rate on short yardage offense, and if our special team is going to be the clown and circus show every week, the special teams probably spots the team 7 points every game. It's really that bad. You think back to the Raiders game. We come out in the Raiders game and we sustain an 8-minute drive and score a touchdown, and our defense comes out and pitches a 3-and-out. And our special teams immediately runs into the kicker and gives them a free first down. Those are game-costing penalties on your special teams. Houston game, we gave up a fake punt that was critical in the game. Green Bay, we muff a punt that was critical in the game. And so I just look at that and I'm like, why would you expect the Dolphins to have success but we have an inability to even switch out the special teams coach when you're seeing stuff like that hurt the team week in and week out? And so that's where I'm at with Stephen Ross. Like, if you want to get rid of Chris Greer, get rid of Chris Greer. But at some point, somebody has to say it's not just outcome. What are the actual issues and how are they going to get addressed? And I think that's the reason it's been 20 years without a playoff victory is I don't think Stephen Ross steps up and asks the hard questions of the staff.
I will say this about Mike McDaniel. It's been objectively, he's objectively done not a good job the 3 years that he's been here. There's a way that you can measure that, and that's by the win total that is put out every single year. It's been 9.5 for 3 years, and even if he wins out this year, that'll mean that he has gone under 2 of the 3 years that he was here, meaning he has underachieved 2 of the 3 years. About not being able to run your offense on the road is because of all those motions and all that stuff. Look at what happened when they played Buffalo. Go back and watch that game in Buffalo. That place was a madhouse. Somehow the offense hummed all the way through. Why? They got rid of all those cadences. They got rid of all the motions, and they were just calling plays and setting up with like 15, 20 seconds to go. And then Tua had plenty of time to orchestrate if he wanted to, and sometimes he was just going. So the fixes are right there. Like what ails the offense are right there. Mike McDaniel, I like his system. I like his demeanor. I like how he comports himself on the sideline. I like how he handles the team week in and week out. But as far as the game day coach, I don't think it's been these last 3 years. I think it's been, it hasn't been a good thing. Like it's not. I don't think it's something that he could point to and say, look, I keep overachieving. I don't care how many times he makes the playoffs. He keeps falling short of those win totals every single year. This is going to be another year. It was 9.5 this year. He's going to get to 9 if he wins out. Nobody will ever convince me that Chris Greer wanted these quarterbacks, because I know Chris Greer, the last couple of seasons, has been maniacally looking for a backup quarterback and has spent a lot of money on backup quarterbacks. First time with Teddy Bridgewater, and then a lot with Mike White. I think that one's on McDaniel, but the guards, that's on Chris Greer. The one good guard that he couldn't afford, which is Robert Hunt. And Robert Hunt's going to be an All-Pro this year. But at $20 million a year, who the hell wants to spend that? He had plenty of opportunities to upgrade one of those guard spots, and I think that they own what each of them own. I think Stephen Ross is going to listen to both of these guys, and he's going to see who made the better case to stay. In my opinion, I think Mike McDaniel is going to have the better excuses because he has to make work with what he's been given. There is no way, and I know for a fact, okay, that Liam Meikenberg has not been a favorite of Butch Barry's. I've been in 2 training camps with Butch Barry, watching him constantly demote Liam Meikenberg during training camp. One time he lost his job outright to Isaiah Wynn. Then somehow he manages to weasel his way back into the starting lineup when people get hurt, right? But, when you're a backup, it's going to happen if somebody gets hurt. But then he starts this year with a position handed to him. Who did that? That has to have been Chris Greer. Okay? There's no way that a coaching staff that keeps demoting Liam Meikenberg all of a sudden are left with Liam Meikenberg as a starting right guard. So I think Stephen Ross is going to hear 2 cases. In my estimation, look, on that sideline, you saw Stephen Ross with Garfinkel, and then you saw him give Mike McDaniel a game ball. Look, Chris Greer goes down to the sidelines the last 2 minutes of every game where they're ahead, no matter what. This was the first time that he was not spotted on the sidelines, and he was not spotted in the booth. He was nowhere to be found. And there were no college football games, so it wasn't like he was out scouting anywhere. All right? So it was a choice that he made not to be there. Yet Mike McDaniel gets a game ball. I think the writing's on the wall. That if anything's going to happen, I think that Chris Greer is probably going to be quietly just set aside, and they'll do something like an interim GM, maybe Marvin Allen, and they'll do like a long year-long search, which will coincide with the probationary period that Mike McDaniel is going to have. But he's learning on the job, and that's the problem, because they had a team that was kind of ready-made, and Mike McDaniel has spent the last 3 years learning on the job. He's done a lot of good things, but in the end, you're judged by the ultimate result. He's the opposite of Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni has all the results, but he's a complete idiot. Like he's a complete moron. So if Nick Sirianni gets fired, he'll be fired because he's an idiot, not because he gets good results. Like, I don't know if you guys heard, but he got into a fist fight with the opposing team's tight end, Zach Ertz, who used to be his tight end, by
Yeah.
the way, after the game. Like, that's clown stuff, okay? That's something that Mike McDaniel doesn't do. Like, he represents your team well. He represents your organization well. When he does an interview, he's entertaining. Like, he's likable. He helps put your team on the map. But I don't know if we're going to go with 4 years looking at this. Look, I guess at the end of the year, we're going to see, look, Miami's going to be a favorite again next year in Vegas. I think that their win total is going to be at 9.5 again. You could hear what these guys are saying. Listen to Tony Romo in that broadcast with Jim Nantz. He was looking at the roster. He was like, a tweak here, a tweak here, a tweak there. I think they're going to be one of the best teams in the AFC. So you could see where they're going with this, which means they're probably going to have a 9.5 win total next year. Are they going to win 10? Are they going to win 11? Are they going to get back to this 9-win thing again? So, yeah, I think nobody here can hang their hat on anything. I really don't. The one guy that out of the entire coaching staff, the whole thing for the last 3 years, the one guy that you could point to and say that guy did his job is Anthony Weaver. That's it. And I think he's going to be gone soon, unfortunately.
I don't know. I still think that there's a very distinct possibility that Weaver doesn't get. I'm sure Weaver will get interviewed. I don't know if he gets hired, because there's a big difference between interviewing for the job and then getting hired for the job. I think that
he will. He'll get interviewed. I agree with you, Louis. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, he'll get interviewed. I'm sure Weaver will get maybe 2 or even 3 interviews. I don't think he gets hired. I think there are going to be other teams that are going to be like, I already have my guy. I already know who I want. And not for nothing, because I don't know how much weight we should put into it, but he is a name. Apparently, Pete Carroll is interested in coming back to coach again. So there's that. And I don't know how many, like, there's probably going to be some GM out there somewhere who's going to say, look at Pete Carroll and say, oh, yeah, I remember what you did in Seattle. Let's bring you in to let's at least see what you have to say.
How about them Cowboys?
But the thing is, guys with that kind of clout, like a Pete Carroll, and I'm gonna keep bringing it up. Granted, he doesn't have the same accolades as a Bill Belichick. He's going to want to have some level of organizational control that a front office is just going to be uncomfortable with.
Right, but Pete Carroll is not as off-putting as Belichick on a personal level. Pete Carroll was the original players coach. Belichick is very much not.
I get that. I get that, but you have to be such a specialized situation to look at a guy that's, older than Bill Belichick, believe it or not. People used to throw that stat out there like 3 times a year, and it would surprise everybody. Who's older than Bill Belichick, because then you're hiring him. Okay, this is going to be like a 3-4 year thing at the most. And we gotta really max out this window here. But he's also going to want some level of organizational control. So you're looking at a situation that's going to want to be win now, that's going to have a roster that he's okay with, that's going to have a front office that's on board with his vision. I think we're getting to a point where the really, really kind of old school of, you got Tom Coughlin, you got Bill Belichick coaching into his later years. I think we're getting to a point where we're just not going to see that anymore, because I think teams value the idea of having that infrastructure there in a coach long term. And I think that's part of the reason why teams like hiring these guys young, is they like the idea of, okay, well, we can really get this guy, we can build this infrastructure here, and we've got something for 8, 9, 10 years that we don't really have to worry about at that head coach position. I don't think, looking at some of these older coaches, teams are going to want to have to deal with the turnover that's naturally going to come from that, 3-4 years down the road.
Well, for what it's worth, the reports were that Pete Carroll was eyeballing the Chicago Bears job. And I'm sure that the Bears, with their brand new quarterback, Caleb Williams, they're going to be looking for an offensive-minded head coach who is going to try to unlock the greatness that they believe Caleb Williams is capable of. So in that same report, Cliff Kingsbury is somebody who the Bears might have been targeting to take over that job now that Matt Eberflus is out the door. So Carroll has the pedigree. Kingsbury has that offensive guru status. So where the real question becomes, if you're going to talk about Anthony Weaver leaving, you have to consider who are the teams that are about to fire their head coach. Obviously, the Bears already did. Who else is playing interim? The Jets. The Jets need a new head coach.
Vegas is going to need a new head coach.
You think
New
Antonio
Orleans
Pierce is gone?
Yes.
New England.
Yes.
New England.
You're going to fire Gerard Mayo after 1 year?
Didn't they say he was sticking around next year?
Not sure.
I don't know.
I think they just said that they're sticking with Mayo one more season.
It's one of those things where you are until you aren't, depending on who's available. I don't think Mayo's on like the proverbial really hot seat, but if Pete Carroll wanted the job, that might make things interesting. But I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't think we're going to lose Weaver. I do think the defense he's called has been really good. We just have terrible safety tackling. We have a lot of plays it's designed to let the ball dump out for a 2-3 yard gain and get tackle, and we miss a tackle, and that 3 yard dump is like an 8 yard gain. It's happened a lot this year with Holland and Poyer and Walker. And if we had competent tackling safeties, this would be a pretty good looking defense. But this was his first year as a defensive coordinator, right? Weavers with the Dolphins. He was
With
not
Miami,
with the
yes.
Rams.
He was a co-coordinator last year, and he was a DC, I think, in 2020 in Houston.
That
he did have
defense
one.
didn't look that great,
Right.
which is why he lost the job.
I could see a team wanting to see him another year or two before they jump at him. He needs
although in
to put together, like,
2020
a top 10 defense.
Yeah, in 2020, Anthony Weaver was essentially running Romeo Crennel's defense. And all you have to do is just look back at that defense and then look at the stuff that they're doing here in Miami. It's completely different. Like, he essentially he learned under Mike McDonald and he adopted that scheme, and now that scheme is ours. So that's a good thing, because that's where it's going. That's where the NFL is going forward now, is with Mike McDonald's scheme. There's always a new guy. It was Fangio's scheme for like 10 years, and now it's Mike McDonald's scheme.
Which requires, it's mandatory, excellent safety play. And he has had none of that all year long. Zero. Javon Holland, Javon Holland, I don't know what happened here. Whether it's he's hoofing it or he's just trying to get on the highlight reel so he can get paid. Either way, I'm very happy to move on from him next year. So sorry. Jordan Poyer, obviously, he's not sticking around. So, there some?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say Marcus May didn't pan out. You still have Elijah Campbell, so I guess you can see what they have in him. And I don't know. I don't know.
Unless they're out of it, they're going to continue to play Poyer.
Safety play is something that's going to have to be addressed in the offseason. I don't think you've got an answer on the roster right now.
We don't know what we have in Patrick
McMorris. But I don't think you're not gonna learn enough about Patrick McMorris in a 2-game sample. So I think you have to
1 game probably.
Yeah, 1 game sample, depending on what happens Saturday. You're gonna have to operate on, we need 1 safety for sure, maybe 2. And depending on how good that 1 safety is, probably determines whether or not you go out and you get a second safety. The other thing that's probably the most impressive thing, at least in my estimation, with Anthony Weaver, is he was running a defense that had no pass rush for like half the year, because Chop Robinson really didn't catch on until, midway through the season. And once he did catch on, he kind of, caught on like a house on fire. But, the pass rush was non-existent in the first half of the season. I mean, they had 11 sacks in their first 10 games, 12 sacks in their first 10 games. They weren't getting anywhere. They weren't getting to the quarterback. And so for Weaver to have the defense that he does and the caliber of defense that he does, number one, with I think a less talented defense than what they had to work with last year, overall top to bottom. And, considering the regression of your safeties and some of the injuries that you dealt with this year, I think he's done a fantastic job.
Oh yeah, I think so too. I mean, I hope we don't lose him. I'm
We're-
pretty high on Weaver.
We're not going to lose him. You still have Mike Vrabel hovering out there, and he's going to be out there just waiting for his opportunity wherever that is. Now you have Pete Carroll floating around. Cliff Kingsbury's already been looked at, and again, teams want offense. They want their quarterback to become the next big thing, because if you don't have a quarterback, you might as well give it up. It's not even worth it. That's just the reality of how the NFL works. Like, I like that we're kind of going vintage a little bit now that things are starting to go towards the running game. Because if you look at the betting sites out there, it used to be like a quarterback X over 300 yards, quarterback X over 350 yards. Now it's like you're lucky if you even get to like 250. Like, they're running the ball more. That is just the reality of what is going on. But even still, if you don't have a quarterback, you're wasting your time. And every team who is drafting a quarterback wants a coach who's going to be able to take this quarterback under their wing and say, I am going to turn you into the next Patrick Mahomes, because that's the standard. Or I'm going to turn you into the next Josh Allen. You don't think that the Colts are looking at Anthony Richardson and saying, I want this guy to be Josh Allen 2.0? They want this guy to be this superhuman monster who can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and that will lead them to victory in the future. So defensive-minded head coaches, they have their place. And John Harbaugh, for his part, he was a special teams coordinator. And he's been there since God knows how long at this point. It feels like over a decade. So that works out for them. And it's a Harbaugh. He has a pedigree just built in. For guys like Weaver, he's already behind the 8 ball. Because if you are going to be a defensive-minded head coach, you're running the defense, sure. But the guy who's going to get the most attention is the guy who's in charge of your quarterback. And who is that exactly? So if Weaver were to get hired, then you have to ask, who's he bringing with him to try to run the offense? Is he bringing Frank Smith with him? I don't know. Would he try to bring Darrell Bevell? That's probably what I would do. This is because I need a connection. But I think whoever all these teams that are looking for new head coaches, I don't think they're looking to push the defense. The Jets, for sure, they already went the Robert Saleh route. They want an offensive-minded head coach. They're not hiring Anthony Weaver. They may interview him. But
some of it depends on what the job situation is, because like the Cowboys could potentially go defensive-minded with assuming Dak's going to be their quarterback. They may not feel as pressured, whereas like a team like the Bears, they probably want to find somebody that can unlock Caleb Williams' potential. They might be more inclined. I think the Jets, they might have to take whoever will take the job. I think that's probably the least desirable job. It's just a dumpster right now after the Aaron Rodgers aftermath there. So you got to go get a quarterback in the draft, and you're going into the situation where they've just missed on Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold, and the list goes on. So it's just not a job. So that could be, they might try to hire Weaver just because nobody else will take the job. Hopefully he would refuse to take it and be smart. But that kind of floats around. Who teams are going to have the number? Like Jacksonville, to me, won't stick with Peterson. They're going to bring in a whole new coach that's going to draft a quarterback, whether that's Ward or Sanders. Same with the Giants. Those teams are going to want to bring in the guy who's going to draft the quarterback in the draft. So I don't think those are, I guess I'm not too worried about losing Weaver. I'm just high on him in general, I would say.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get ready to call it real quick here. Just so we can say that we talked about it. Do the Dolphins beat Cleveland next week? Chad, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think they should, even if the weather's not that great, just because who are they starting right now? Because they sat Winston down too, right? Jameis Winston.
Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Who Eric thinks is a better option than Jalen Winston. So
against the Dolphins, yes.
I don't know. The Dolphins are not very good at getting interceptions. It's been a rarity this year, and that's the one thing Winston tends to do is throw a lot of picks. But I don't know. I don't think there's gonna be much fight in the Browns. Is Garrett hurt or is he playing? Myles Garrett, do you know? He's playing, so he could wreck us. So we'll see. That'll probably be Armstead.
Although he might as well be hurt because he's mailing it in. lately.
Yeah, because he's worried about his next contract right now, isn't he, Garrett?
Yeah.
I think he's been talking about
He's
that.
tired of. He's like he's trying not to say it, but he's basically begging somebody, please trade for me. I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah, but this is a game we'd have to lose it because like the Browns are probably more interested as an organization in getting a higher draft pick right now than winning this game, and it won't be. With it being cold in Cleveland, I can't imagine it's going to be a big turnout attendance wise for this game from their fans. So Miami should be able to win this game, I would think.
And even if Garrett wasn't mailing it in, they've already shut down Nick Bosa. They pretty much shut down. What's the Raiders guy's name? I'm blanking right now.
Crosby.
Max Crosby.
So I don't know what it is about this offense. Like the offensive line is crap, except for when you have a star pass rusher, and they just completely shut him down. So, like,
well, Mike McDaniel a lot of times doesn't block the star pass rusher, believe it or not, or he's a weird. Like he just does a scheme where he doesn't really let that guy impact the play design. So, it'll be away from him, or he's going to be chipped and it's going to be way outside of him. He just kind of stays away from him. And Mike McDaniel has a good scheme. I like this scheme. I think it's where you want to be in the NFL. I'm not suggesting you go bring in like a Belichick and try to run a 1970s power football. We can't do that. He needs to fix his deficiencies. I don't think it's a bad scheme, and I do like how he handles impact defensive play. If you have one real stud on a defense, he's really good at not letting that one player dictate the game to you.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins win. Am I worried that Dorian Thompson-Robinson might run for 100? Yes. But do I think that that'll probably happen and the Dolphins still win the game pretty comfortably? Also, yes. So I got them winning on Sunday.
Alf?
Yeah, Miami should handle this game. That's not a problem.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I don't see the Dolphins losing to the Browns, whether it's Jameis Winston or whether it's Dorian Thompson-Robinson or however the heck his name is said. I'm not worried about it. I think Miami wins. It's just a question of whether or not the Broncos and the Chargers end up winning their games. If they both win, then all of this is moot. It doesn't matter. But Miami, I feel like they're going to take care of their business for whatever that's worth. So I've been saying it. I'm going to continue to say it. I'm willing to let Mike McDaniel learn on the job, as Alf mentioned. I'm willing to wait around for him to learn and grow, because if the end result ultimately ends up being somebody like a Dan Campbell who still has his flaws, but he's obviously made his identity and he knows exactly what he is, and even if we disagree with some of the decisions, he knows exactly what he's trying to do. I'm willing to wait around for that. Because it's not like the Dolphins are 2-16 or whatever in the meantime. They're still playing well. There's still something that you can look forward to and get excited about. The combination of Tua and McDaniel, they like each other a lot. They work well together. Again, is it perfect? No. Do they have a lot to work on? Yes. All of that boils down to one thing, and it's only one thing. The offense needs to be more balanced. In order to get more balance, I know that Alf, you guys in the OnlyFins, which by the way, OnlyFins discord.gg/OnlyFins. Only what is it? $5 a month now?
January 1st, yeah.
January 1st starts to be $5 a month. Okay, so still the best Dolphins talk, and it's worth the $5 a month. So trust us on that. With that said, I think that guards are more important than getting a stud running back, even if that running back is getting comparisons by our 3 yards per carry people to Barry Sanders, which, believe me, that's a very intoxicating idea.
You're not getting him. Don't worry. He's going to be gone in the first 10 picks, so I can tell you right now.
If Chris Greer remains the GM, you never know. Like he loves to wheel and deal.
Yeah,
that's like his whole thing.
You're talking about Genty?
Yeah, he's talking about Genty.
No,
he's going to be your top 10.
You gotta get a bruiser next to HN.
Oh no, I agree, 100%.
Did Barry Sanders can just dodge and weave everybody, man? Like those highlights are ridiculous.
We saw the guy run over Iowa State, right? That's who they need. Is it Arizona State? I think the guy's name.
Yeah, the Scatterbone.
Scatterbone. That's who this.
Yeah, but Ashton Genty runs with a lot of power. He's 5'9", 218 pounds.
Oh, he's he's elite. I'm just saying he won't be on the board when the Dolphins pick, so I'm not worried about him. Unless he gets hurt, he's going top 10 because he changes an entire offense immediately.
No, absolutely.
Modern day Derrick Henry.
Oh, he's
No.
You're talking about changing an offense.
No, Ashton
No.
Genty is LaDainian Tomlinson.
Yeah.
Is who he is.
That's probably better.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to have him, but A-Chan's turning into like Marshall Faulk. I mean, he's sensational with what he can do, like skill wise.
The thing is that next season they might need A-Chan to play more wide receiver. He runs routes like a wide receiver,
which I'm perfectly okay with. Like in 2026. I know that we're trying to find any excuse we can to move off of Tyreek next year. I don't think it's going to happen. Next year he sticks around. The 2026 is when they move off of him. But with that said, in 2026, I'd be more than happy to pay Achane and then shift him to wide receiver and let him be the new Tyreek and let him and Waddle run crazy and then go get another running back.
Does it all in the offense.
Devon Achane is not going to get away with you paying him running back money to be.
Hey, running backs are getting a good pay chunk these days.
No, but not
compared to wide receivers. No, like
they're not.
It's not nothing.
Go look at Saquon Barkley. Look, Saquon Barkley might be MVP. Although they're not going to give it, they always give it to a quarterback.
They're going to give it to Josh Allen.
But I don't know.
Lamar's
Saquon Barkley has a legitimate shot to set the all-time rushing record. It's one of the most revered, and he might do it in the 16 games. Okay, because I think he's 192 away to do it in 16 games. Right? I think that's right.
Yeah.
Which means he's probably going to do it in 17, but then he's going to do it with an asterisk. Okay, so it's not the same. That's one of the most revered records in all of football, the rushing record.
Yeah,
and he does that, and he's not going to get the MVP. Go look at his contract. Go look at his contract, and you tell me it's a joke. He makes nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not for nothing, and I know that he's not going to be available at 48. And I know that there's a million different things that the Dolphins should probably address before running back, but if you can't get Genty, man, Omarion Hampton is so good.
They running backs. They're so far down the needs list. I mean,
I know.
Guards. We need a D tackle. We need safety.
I know.
So I know.
Well, I did a poll on, and let's see if you guys, if you're on Discord, don't cheat. I know Lewis is on there. We did a poll on OnlyFins, and we said, look, Miami will need a frontline running back next season. Free agency or draft. Who? ? And these were the choices. Target Ashton Genty with a first-round pick. A day 2 guy. A day 3 guy. Sign Najee Harris. Sign Aaron Jones. Sign Nick Chubb. Sign Javonte Williams. Who do you guys think won?
I would be Javonte Williams. I'm going to say Najee Harris won. That's my.
I'm gonna go ahead.
I think you and me have the same answer. I think everybody kind of got stars in their eyes and said,
"Yeah." So it's like, oh my God, Ashton Genty, yeah! Like, of course he's gonna win. The idea, the very thought of having Barry Sanders in the modern era, like, of course that's gonna be the one that that wins the poll.
I'll tell you in what order it came in. All right. Target Ashton Genty with a first-round pick, 1. Okay. Use a day 3 pick was number 2. Sign Najee Harris was number 3. Sign Javonte Williams was number 4. Sign Nick Chubb was number 5. Use a day 2 pick was number 6. And last was sign Aaron Jones.
Yeah, I mean, again,
you know what's the weird thing about all of this? Aaron Jones would be such a perfect fit, and he's finished last in the poll. First of all, he'll be cheap, and he'll be really effective. He can run outside zone, and he can catch the ball. So,
who are you talking about, Al?
Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones.
Oh, he'll be cheap. Yeah, I mean, for the role, I'd be fine with that. I just we need somebody that, because all the defenses now are playing their linebackers 5-7 yards back to take away the in-cutting routes. Mike McDaniel's offense, and we need somebody that can just pound them right now, a bruising back. So I hope we get somebody like Scatterbo, like a day 2, somebody like that. But I mean,
Scatterbo's a day 3 guy. If you're going day 2,
if you get him day 3, even better, because all he needs to do is just force them to not run that
Caleb Johnson would be that
Yeah,
guy.
I'd take him. He'd be fine too. But
Him,
somebody though that's bigger than Shannon Wright, like a 220,
Damian
230
Martinez
pound.
would be another guy that's a day 3 guy.
Damian
There's
Martinez,
actually a lot
though,
of good running backs in this
Damian
draft.
Martinez is, I think, is going to come back though, so he's not going to be available.
Yeah,
this year.
probably. I agree.
Yeah. The only problem with Damian Martinez is that he doesn't check every single box for this regime. Like, you got to hit home runs for this regime.
Yeah, he's a singles hitter.
So if you can't take a carry 40 yards for a touchdown, 60 yards for a touchdown, they probably don't want you. But Damian Martinez, out of all the running backs that I've watched, and this is not Homer thing, okay? Because I saw him play all year. He does every single thing a running back has to do perfectly, except that he doesn't hit home runs. But he catches it really well. He can block. He runs with power. He breaks tackles. So, yeah, a year from now, a day 3 guy, Damian Martinez, absolutely.
Well, if Mike McDaniel will ever learn his lesson, he'll be willing to look past the lack of overall speed if it means that everything else is addressed. All right. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and call it here. Everybody, thank you all so much for listening. As always, make sure you check out Underdog Fantasy. Make sure you check out Thompson's Cigar with the promo code 3YARDS. That's 3YARDS. We will see you all next week. It's going to be back to our regular Tuesday schedule now that Christmas is over. New Year's is going to be coming up, but we're going to go ahead and we're just going to look past that. Oh, wait, no, actually, New Year's Eve is Tuesday. Do we want to hold off? Do we want to hold off again? As everybody's going to be busy, I think. Maybe we'll revisit this. We'll discuss it, and we'll make sure that everybody is aware of it. So with that said, thank you all once again for joining us. We will see you all next week for another episode of Pulse of Fins Nation. Good night.